or the snake, as the case may be. Hello, thank you for joining me again. This is going to be, I hope, a very short broadcast, very much like the last one. Again, part of my Anatomy Master series, if I, in fact, get around to editing this and shortening it, as I hope to do. Anyway, this is Daily Art Adventure number 840, what? 3, woohoo! Creeping up on 850, little by little. That's always exciting. And for this episode, we're going to talk about the ear. Not my ears. I was quite self-conscious about my ears when I was a kid because I felt like they were too big. Now I'm 66 years old. They really are too big. But fortunately, I've gotten over most of the self-conscious stuff. I'll show you some of the books that I'll be working from. One is Drawing the Head in Figure by Jack Ham. I'm just going to show you a page from that. Not going to deal with it much. The other is a book that I'm about to give away to a young artist. And before I give it away, I want to derive some benefit. So he has a good page of ears there. And and then a couple things that I found on Pinterest. In fact, they're on my Pinterest account. In case I forget to say it later, Pinterest is great and terrible. It has ruined the whole image search function in Google, because if you do a search for any image and do a search and hit image, half the stuff that comes up is on Pinterest, which means there's no attribution. You don't know where it comes from or who did it most of the time. So it's ruined image search, but we still use it. I still use it. But on the other hand, it's one of the best things that's happened. So what Pinterest is good for, in my account, I have it over there somewhere. I think it's Pinterest Dan the Art Man, but I think if you do a search for Pinterest, go to Pinterest and search for Dan Nelson, you'll find my account, which is not anything special, except that I do have one board. You post pins to the board in Pinterest, right? And I think last count it has 127 anatomy, instructional anatomy posts. Some of them are very analytical. Others are just good illustrations of anatomy. Anyway, so for what it's worth. All right, let's get to work. And the first thing I'm going to do is move you. That was pretty slick, wasn't it? So now you're looking down. Again, the most important anatomy book in the world is the blank one that you fill up. Before I launch, let me go ahead and show you Jack Ham, which is one of my favorite masters. Typical Jack Ham style. He has a whole page, 6, 10, 12, 20, 34, about 40 or 50 ears. Ha! Typical Jack Ham, crammed full of examples and information. And I'm just going to say, yeah, get it, draw these, look at it, but that's typical Jack Ham. The other is the Christopher Hart book, the one that I'm going to give away. So I'm getting stuff out of it before I give it away. He has a very nice page. I'm going to not follow his, but what I'm going to do is more closely related to this. It's a nice clean. One of the things about Christopher Hart's instruction is it's called Human Anatomy Made Amazingly Easy. So he tries to keep things clean so you can follow them. So that's just for what it's worth. I'm showing you both of those. I didn't even look at Andrew Loomis. I'm sure he has some wonderful things about anatomy. Before we start building stuff, let me show you some sketches that I just did last night, yesterday afternoon maybe. Way here at the bottom of this page, I started thinking about ears. Again, this is partly because I have an anatomy class coming up in this summer, in a couple months. So I was drawing and analyzing, and I came up with 2 images and then a third that I'm not sure what to call it. Let me zoom in on this for just a minute. Again, maybe I'll post something like this on my community page, I'm not sure, but I divided the ear into 2 categories. The parts of the ear that process that move toward us, that stick out in our direction, than the parts of the ears that recess. So you can, it's a good idea often to try to define those two different categories. The images, the parts of the ear that come away from the head toward the viewer, and the parts of the ear that recess. So that's all I'm going to say about that right now. I might come back to that later. We'll see. All right, let's start doing some mnemonic devices, shall we? I'm going to grab a piece of paper and first of all show you this. Now, here's the bad part about Pinterest. This is obviously a CAD, computer-aided design, digital drawing. It looks to me like it's actually drawn by hand and then reworked on the computer, which is the way I advocate. I think that's the best way to do computer drawing. Is do it by hand first and then modify it on computer. Anyway, this is brilliant. And the bad part about Pinterest is I have no idea who did this. If somebody out there knows who did it, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. Hello, Crystalline again. So he divides the ear into 4 different shapes. And maybe if you call this if you call this a snail, partly unraveled, maybe. You call this a bowl or a clamshell, maybe. How about, we got shells going on now. We got a we got a snail and a clamshell and some other kind of shell. I'm being silly. But that is a good way to look at it. And then he puts the 4 together. I just pulled this out of Pinterest because I thought, dang, that's brilliant. All right. Then here's another one. Now the good news is this person put his name. I got this on Pinterest too, but his name is there, Normand LeMay. And I Googled Normand LeMay just a few minutes ago and found out that he's a pretty famous animation artist working for Disney out in Los Angeles. So he says the ear is essentially a question mark plus the letter Y. You put them together and it becomes that. And then he shows you a 3-dimensional diagram, sort of like a basket or a tub on its up on end, then the outside edge, the inside Y, and there you have it. Ooh, here's a good note. Always at a slight angle. In other words, the front of the ear, if this is a person looking this direction, okay, the front of the ear is never vertical. He says it's always at a slight angle. Now see, I'd never read that before. Do you understand that if you're looking at somebody and drawing all this stuff, you'll probably get it right if you're paying close attention, but you'll get it right more quickly if you already have this rule in your head. Does that make sense? Plus, there's many times that you don't have a model in front of you and then you really have to have it in your head. So Normand LeMay, look him up. Way to go, Normand. Good stuff here. And then he talks about how the ears are the most important element on the head, viewed from the front, viewed from the face, or the back, either one, but to show the angle of the head. I've talked about that before. I won't repeat that right now. All right. So I'm going to quickly draw my cheater method, my mnemonic device for drawing an ear. First of all, I'm going to draw a lovely swan. I should have Camille Saint-Saëns swan playing in the background. All right, there. Is that a nice swan? And one of the reasons that the swan motif it works really well is because of this taper right here, and a little bit of a head, and then a very skinny neck. All right. Now at that point, the swan, you know, it ought to go like this, and it doesn't. So it's just the swan's head and neck. Okay, can you remember that? Now the next thing we're going to do, in a couple of these people that I looked at, they use the letter Y. So you have to, of course, use a little bit of imagination, but it's a Y kind of like that. We put it right in here in the middle of the swan's neck. Okay? And I'll do some shading in here in just a minute so you can see. Now the swan turns into, I'm not sure what to call this. It's kind of, I don't know if you've ever seen when horses are pulling a wagon and they've got the blinder over their head, and here's the horses and here's the rest of the horse's face, right, like that. And when they're on parade, often they'll put a feed sack around the horse's neck so he can, and they'll put some oats down there so the horse can munch away. Why am I telling you all this? Well, this part of the ear kind of looks like a feed sack that somebody has taken a whack at and damaged somewhat. This is an earlobe. Maybe I should just call it an earlobe, eh? But if it's a feed sack, it's like that, but then somebody's taken a whack out of it. I like violent verbs. Can you tell? Violent verbs are easier to remember than gentle ones. So there, that is really weak, but that's the best I can do, okay? A weed sack, a weed sack, a weed sack with a whack out of it. No, a feed sack with a a feed sack with a whack out of it. Okay, there you go. Let's do a little bit of really quick shading here. Then the darkest part of the ear usually is right there, a little bit of shading right there. Oh, and I didn't do this part at the front of the ear, but that's almost, is that a part of the ear or part of the head? Pretty hard to say which is which. And there are names for all these things. I almost know some of them. I do remember that this outside edge is called a helix, and I went to my drawer and I said, man, that name really sounds familiar. And sure enough, I have this really nifty triangle drawing. I used to have a lot of, I still do. I used to use all kinds of tools like this back in the day, especially like when I was doing patent illustrations for a patent lawyer, and I had to get angles right and stuff like that. So anyway, there's the word helix. That has absolutely nothing to do with anything. I just thought it was interesting. All right, so this part out here is called the helix. This will not be on the quiz. The swan's head neck is called the helix. Then the Y is called the antihelix, or alongside the helix, I suppose, is something like that. Okay, so that's not a. Let me fix this part. It's not a bad ear. Not fantastic, but it'll do. Now, as you can imagine, and some earlobes are totally attached to the side of the head, and some hang down, you know, so everyone will be different. Let me repeat myself, by the way. If you are looking at a model, your powers of observation will help you to draw the model accurately. Correct? Correct. But if you already have in your mind, like in this case, what a typical human ear looks like, then you will be able to draw the model in front of you more accurately and more quickly. I'm trying to decide whether to take a detour there. I will. I'll probably edit all this out of the video that I'm going to do, but let me. Hello, Sally. Thank you for joining us. Let's go to the basic human face just for a minute, and I'm just going to quickly scribble out a basic sort of typical female face. Okay, let's just imagine that I can draw this face from memory, or by rote, and that's a joke because I just drew it from memory. I drew it by rote. All right, let's just say I'm going to say, okay, that's kind of a typical, real quickly drawn, real sloppy. That's a typical female face. Now, the fact that this is in my head, along with a whole bunch of other male and female, adult and children faces, do you understand? But the fact that this is in my mind means that then when I'm looking, and I wish now that I had a photograph. I don't. Let me grab Andrew Loomis's, the cover of Andrew Loomis's book. Let's just pretend this is a photograph. So then when I am looking, by the way, Andrew Loomis does these things out of his head. He is absolutely sick. He is sick. I say that with the utmost respect, of course. Nothing but envy. What you're hearing from me right now is pure envy. So let's imagine that when I'm looking at either a photograph or a real model of a person, what I get is if I have this in my head, Then I compare the woman that I'm looking at to the standard images that is in my head. See, this is what a beginner young art student doesn't have in their mind. A typical college student who's doing figure drawing, all they have in their mind, all they have is the, oh, this is all heads, so I was going to pull up an anatomy. But the art student probably doesn't have this so much in their mind. What they have is what they're looking at. And it takes them harder, it's longer, and when they're done, it's not as accurate. Whereas if you already have 1, 2, 15, 20, or 30 female faces in your filing, in your reference files, what it is then you can draw this more quickly because you're comparing the two. All right, does that make sense? I will cut that all out of the edited version, but the same is true, of course, for ears. All right, let's get down to the fun stuff, which is mnemonic devices. And I'm going to do the cooking show thing. First thing I want you to do is you're going to make a big flat piece of clay. Ta-da! What do you know? It's already done. And then you're going to take some of this clay. I'm going to have to find out what kind of clay this is because it works really well. It's nice and soft. It's not Sculpey, and it's not modeling clay. It's not self-drying clay. It might be oven. No, it's not oven baked because I put it in the oven one time and it melted. Anyway. All right, so you make a snake. Now let's go ahead and make that swan's neck, which means basically I taper that down, and the swan is, his neck is, his or her neck is almost all the way down. And now I'm going to do the feed sack that somebody whacked. How about that? Feed sack that got whacked. Do you know what I mean by that? Again, here's the feed sack, then somebody whacked it. Took a divot out of it. All right, so that's what this is right here. Let's go ahead and kind of smoosh this seam together. All right, and then I'm going to take another piece. Way to go, Uncle. Redoing your mom's painting. Fantastic. I have a couple of those from my dad too that I would love to do. I've just never gotten around to it. Okay, so this is the letter Y. And I don't know yet whether I'm going to actually have my students do all of these things, or am I going to, am I just going to have them watch this video or have them watch me do it? I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. I am open to your input in that regard. I'm just using this eraser here to mold the pieces. All right, so there's, do you recognize that? Swan, feed sack with a whack. There we go. I'm getting better. That's the mnemonic device. Feed sack with a whack, and then the letter Y. Right. Let's cut off the excess. Let's go ahead and put this part in front of the ear. It is definitely part of the ear, but it can be almost seen just as much as a part of the head because it grows right up from the side head. Now I can peel this up, and that's not too bad. We can make a few changes though now that it's in 3D. Number one, the deepest part of the ear is right down there at the base of the Y. And the whole ear maybe is curved a little bit like this. It's cupped coming toward us. By the way, before I go any further, and this is a really crude ear, but I don't even have to tell you that. You know that, don't you? Yeah, it just made it in a few minutes. There's a wide variety in human ears. Did I say that yet? I'm saying it now. There's a very wide variety, and that's where, again, your powers of observation will help you. But if you already have a standard ear, some, for instance, in some ears, the anti-helix, this Y shape, actually comes out further than the helix. And you'll know when to do that simply when you have a model sitting in front of you or a photograph sitting in front of you. Now, I want to do one more thing to this ear before we leave it, and that is turn it over and look at it from the back. Ooh, that doesn't look anything like an ear at the moment, but let's work with it a little bit. First of all, the back side of the helix almost always has a rim or a ridge along here. And let's curve this quite a bit. And now, all of that. Let's see if I can make it look like an ear from the back. Again, once again, wide variety in human ears. So we've got this big seam here that's confusing us. Let me see if I can pinch that together real quick. This is pretty slick, don't you think? I'm being sarcastic. It's pretty crude, but can you imagine now? Where's the side of the head? Let's use this paper towel. So if you can just sort of imagine that that's the head. That's an ear from the back. And this crease right here, again, wide variety in real models, but if you just have this already in your mind, that the back of the ear has a big rim, usually, at the back of it, that will help you quite a bit. Let's see if, no, I've ruined the front of the ear, so we won't look at that anymore. Let's do a quick drawing of an ear or two, and then wrap it up. And I'll do that here in my anatomy sketchbook that I am trying to fill up. I think part of the fun of making an anatomy sketchbook is you have the additional challenge of just trying to fill it up. You can see I sketched an ear here earlier. Hi guys. Oh my goodness, look at all your chats. I love it. Hello, Barbara. Fun. All right. So let's do, again, a swan. A little bit of a bulge for the head. And again, that can vary a great deal. And again, as you know, this is just a very crude. There's the feed sac with a whack. There's the whack. There's often a little bulge right there, which is to be expected because the feed sac got whacked, right? There's often a little crease, especially as people get older. There'll be a crease right at the front of this, this little bulge. I'm sure it has a name. I didn't look it up. All right, then in here there's a letter Y. Very fat, bulbous, shallow letter Y, of course. You know that already. Now, of course, if we're drawing the other ear, the right ear, then the Y is backwards. You understand that already. You know what I think I might do? I didn't think about this till right now. Instead of shading with a pencil, I'm just gonna, let's be a little bit more accurate and pick up a dirty blending stub. Let's get this part good and dark. There's a name for this part of the ear, that it's a bowl shape. It's this thing right here. I forget what the name of that. Everything here has a name. You know that. And frankly, most artists you don't need to know the name of everything. That's my attitude. I read in the Gary Hart book just yesterday that there are 520 different muscles in the human body. And yes, you can find them all online. They're all labeled, but there you go. Whoops, let's get a lighter side of this blending stub. So the Y, the tail of the Y just basically fades out down there toward the bottom. But will you buy that? And again, I like the what's his name? Normand LeMay points out this angle right here. That's a good tip. I don't remember ever reading that before. That's one that I remember. So there you go. If you can draw an ear sort of like that, then when you're actually drawing a real ear that's sitting in front of you, you won't have to waste so much energy thinking, because this is already firmly implanted in your mind. That's the way this business works. Fair enough? Thanks. Now let me look at your, okay, tell you what, I'm going to edit, of course, all this part out of the video when I produce a video, but most of this stuff I don't need to comment. You guys are just talking to yourselves, and I love it. You're welcome for the glazing help. Yeah, Sally, I'm with you. What's with this uncle guy? He keeps on retracting his comments. Thanks, Sally. Feed sac with whack. I finally came up with a mnemonic device. Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Who said that was good? Thank you, Sally. Appreciate the encouragement. And y'all go now and draw ears. Whew, it's going to take us a while. 12 weeks, we'll be busting gut to get through much of the human body in just 12. That's 24 hours of instruction, and I think we're going to have our hands full. By the time it gets here, I'll have way more than 24 hours worth of material to teach. I'm positive about that. But I'm excited about it, looking forward to it, and I've enjoyed doing these 2 episodes today. Thank you so much for watching.